Hello and welcome to The Daily Oz. I'm Zara.
I'm Sam.
I'm delighted to announce that the 2025 Australian of the Year is Neale Daniher AO.
Over the weekend, Neale Daniher became the 2025 Australian of the Year. Now, Daniher is the co-founder of FightMND, which is a charity that has raised and invested more than $115 million into medical research to help find a cure for motor neurone disease.
It was a really incredible group of Australians who were nominated for this award, but I was hoping it was going to be Neale Daniher. And I think that sentiment was shared with a lot of Australians.
Our comment section was anything to go by. They were getting behind him.
Yeah, he was a really popular choice for Australian of the Year. Can you tell me a little bit about who he is?
Yeah, of course. So Neale Daniher first rose to prominence as an AFL player. He played more than 80 games for Essendon, finishing up with the side in the early 90s. He later transitioned into coaching, leading the D's, or the Melbourne Demons, from 1998 to 2007. In 2013, Daniher was diagnosed with MND. So when we talk about motor neurone disease, MND is just the shortened version of that. I was reading some of the reporting from the time when he was diagnosed, and Daniher said that he first realised that something was wrong when he was starting to struggle while hanging the washing up. He thought that he was just weak with his hands and thought that he just had to strengthen the muscles. Of course, it turned out to be MND, but at the time he didn't really understand what was happening.
So tell me a little bit more about MND, because since his diagnosis, he's been focused on trying to work out a way to help others with MND. Give me a sense of the medical explanation.
Yeah, so MND is the name given to a group of diseases in which the nerve cells controlling the muscles that allow us to move, to speak, to swallow and breathe basically fail to work normally, and then they eventually die, those muscles. So with no nerves to activate them, the muscles gradually weaken over a period of time and waste. So every day, 2 people in this country, in Australia, are diagnosed with MND. The speed at which MND progresses is different for each person, and survival time also varies, but the average life expectancy for someone with MND is 27 months from diagnosis.
Which is remarkable considering Neale Daniher was diagnosed over a decade ago.
Exactly. So he has defied all odds. 27 months is the average life expectancy. As you said, he was diagnosed over a decade ago, but it is really important to highlight here that there is no cure for MND. It is terminal.
And that's central to the work he's doing, right?
Yeah, so Neale Daniher co-founded FightMND in 2014 to raise awareness and to raise funds for MND. In a speech a few years ago, Daniher explained why FightMND was created in the first place.
But why I do it is that I can't accept that right now there's no treatment or cure. And that drives me to go, well, what can I do?
Now, since its creation, the organisation has invested more than $115 million into MND research.
It's a serious amount of money.
It is. And if you're racking your brain as to why you have heard of FightMND before, it's, I think, because the biggest fundraising event for the organisation is what's called the Big Freeze. Now, Sam, you can probably explain this better than I can, but as someone that dips in and out of AFL, even I'm across this because it's such a big date in the calendar. Essentially, it's when the Demons, which is the team that Daniher was coaching, the Demons play Collingwood. It's a clash that's hosted annually on the King's birthday. And there at that game at the MCG, Big Freeze beanies are sold. You might recognise the blue.
Big blue.
Yeah, exactly.
Blue and grey beanies.
And then high-profile Aussies dress up and slide down the Big Freeze slide into a freezing cold ice bath. And all of this is done in the name of fundraising for MND, but it's also a really beautiful, big, happy occasion where, people bring out their silly side, and it's all done for this really good reason. And that all goes to what Neale Daniher's whole life has really been dedicated to since his diagnosis over a decade ago, which is trying to raise funds and raise awareness for this disease that he battles with every single day. He calls it the beast. And so in a lot of the comms by FightMND, it's referred to as this capital B beast that Neale Daniher is trying to destroy for others and for himself.
One of the remarkable moments of the Big Freeze every year is when Neale Daniher himself often says thank you or says a speech to the crowd. And it has proved to be a bit of a kind of a point on the timeline of Daniher's struggle with MND, because as a viewer, you can see his condition worsen over the years at the time where he's in front of 100,000 people. But he's there every year doing his best. And over the weekend, he was honoured for this tireless work.
He was. So the annual Australian of the Year Awards took place on Saturday night. A reminder that last year's Australian of the Year was jointly awarded to both Richard Scolyer and Georgina Long, who we've both had on this podcast separately. That was to recognise their groundbreaking research into melanoma treatments. And the way that the Australian of the Year Awards work is that each state and territory is represented by a different nominee. And I just thought that we might quickly run through who the other nominees were, because it's just such a crowded space of incredible Australians doing incredible things each and every day. I'll go through them now. So the NT's nominee was Grant Nulmia Nandiri Bala, who's a musician from the Numbawa community in Arnhem Land. Then the ACT's nominee was Megan Gilmore. She's the co-founder and CEO of not-for-profit Missing School, and that organisation supports children who are too sick to attend class. In Queensland, the nominee was Jeffrey Smith. He's the co-founder and CEO of Australian Spatial Analytics, which is a data processing company primarily hiring young neurodivergent people. Over in South Australia, the nominee was Professor Leah Bromfield. She's the director of the Australian Centre for Child Protection. In WA, there was a joint nomination for Diane and Ian Haggerty, who are both farmers working to support biodiversity and save water on their land in the state's wheat belt. In Tassie, the nominee was Sam Elson. He's the founder of Sea Forest, which is a startup turning seaweed into methane-reducing additive for cow and sheep food. God, the things these people are doing.
I know.
And then in New South Wales, the nominee was Kath Koshel, who's the founder of not-for-profit Kindness Factory, which runs educational programs for school students about the power of kindness. And then at the end there, of course, Victoria's nominee was Neale Daniher, who ultimately won on the night.
Let's just take a moment to actually think about that list that you rattled off. Those are some incredible Australians doing really interesting and diverse work, and it definitely gives me a lot of hope for the future.
A very welcome good news
definitely. And so all of these nominees were there in Canberra on Saturday night. Daniher was the winner. Yeah. What did we hear from Daniher after he won?
Hello, Billy here from TDA. We have just looked at our YouTube analytics and 95% of you who are watching our videos aren't subscribing. If you want to help independent media like us grow, the best way you can do that is by pressing subscribe. Thank you so much, and back to the video.
So MND has gradually over time affected Daniher's ability to speak. So he's at this point, I believe, unable to speak. So he accepted his award with a pre-recorded speech. And in this speech, he said of MND, "It doesn't discriminate. It robs you and your ability to move, speak, swallow, and eventually breathe. But it did something else too. It lit a fire within me, a determination to fight for those who are currently affected and those who will face it after me. I choose to fight because if I didn't, how could I expect anyone else to?" On his efforts to fundraise, he said that MND is not incurable, but that it's just underfunded and misunderstood. He said that with focused funding and unwavering determination, we can change that in this country.
And then less than 24 hours later, he emerged onto the court just before the men's final at the Australian Open to some of the most deafening applause that I'm sure we've seen at the tournament. And I think it really gave an indication that despite the challenges he's facing, he really wants to be a very prominent Australian of the year and get out there and educate Australians on MND and his cause.
And just thinking about the last decade, what he's been able to achieve, that he has truly changed the face and the landscape in this country when it comes to MND forever. He has raised so much awareness, and you know, we refer to that $115 million. Like, that is game changing. When I was putting together this podcast, was watching old videos of Neale Daniher. I just wanted to end on something that he said when he was delivering a speech to the Melbourne Demons back in 2017. You should go and find the speech on YouTube because
remarkable.
The whole thing is so inspiring. But there was something that he said that's really stuck with me, and I thought we could end on this note. So here is Neale Daniher speaking to the Melbourne Demons in 2017.
There's a saying, when all's said and done, more is said than done. And the mark of a person is not what they say, it's what they do.
An incredible Australian of the Year. I can't wait to see what he achieves this year. And of course, it'll culminate in the big freeze in May. We're going to throw a link to FightMND in today's show notes so that you can find a little bit more information on MND or donate some funds to help contribute towards finding a cure to the beast. That's all we've got time for today, though. We'll be back in the afternoon with some headlines. Until then, have a great day.